All right.
All right.
Mr. Brawley in
Jeff
the house.
Brawley.
It's good morning. Good to see you guys.
Nice to see you too.
Welcome to the Panhandle of Florida.
Hey, it's great to be here. I've spent some time in the past down here, but this trip I've been able to see a lot more, and it's really nice area.
What do you think about the Redneck Riviera?
Hey, it works. People still spend money.
That's right. Please introduce yourself and kind of what you do and where you come from.
Yeah, thanks. Jeff Brawley. I'm out of Indiana. I grew up on a farm, southern Indiana, and raised by grandparents. And during that process on the farm, it taught me all about quality of life and the work ethic of life. And, I came away with some values that at that time, you don't know what you know, but it was taught to me, patience is a big thing, right? In farming, you get paid once a year. And if you're lucky, you're going to make something. So you pray for rain, you pray for no rain. You just know that if you go out and do good things every day, good things are going to happen. So being able to do patience, that good things are going to come, that was a big learning trade. The second thing was, there's no wrong way to do the right thing. That was an important piece that my grandfather really instilled into me, is like, always do right, and you never have to say you're sorry. Bad things might happen, but they're not your fault. But if you caused it, then that's on you to clean up. It's not on the other person, but it's on you. So always just do the right thing, and you never have to say you're sorry. It's a lot easier. And the third thing was about playing the long game. It's always the long game. You're not going to have overnight success. You cannot plant corn and it's not going to grow overnight. It takes a year. And maybe this year's crop wasn't as good as last year's, and you hope for the next year's crop might be better. And probably the final thing was, there's only certain things you can control in life, and let the rest of things just happen. So through that process of growing up and learning those things, I went to Indiana University, graduated, had a great undergraduate career.
Hoosiers.
Made lifelong connections. The people that I work with every day are people I met in college. And so today, I'll give you the global side. Married, 3 stepchildren, and we live in Bloomington. Have a wonderful life, blessed beyond measure. I could have not even thought my life would be what it is today, and it just has been through the everyday effort, the grind to get to where I'm at today. I just feel like I'm finally arriving after 50 years. I just feel like it's now, after being at it for 30 years in the trenches, in the grind of doing it, that it's just now starting to produce. But it's producing now tenfold. When you they talk about when you make, it's the hardest million to make is your first million. After that, it just comes so much easier. But yeah, that's to give you an idea. I'm in real estate, and real estate's a broad term. So for me, I'm a real estate developer. I'm an agent. I own my own brokerage. I have a property management division. We have the property services division, and within our Brawley Group operations, we sell it, we lease it, we buy it. In our property management division, we can lease it, rent it. In our property services division, we paint it, we mow it, we roof it, we clean it. And our development division, we build it from the ground up, tear it down, rebuild it. So we're vertically integrated, and that took about 10 years. From 2012 to 2022 was the life of each one of those divisions coming to the point where it is today. And that itself is a grind. But it also, when we're vertically integrated in what we do, we can control the timing, the cost, the finished product, and the overall experience of it. So for us, we're not waiting on other people. We're only waiting on ourselves, and then we decide when the project's going to go or not go, and it just takes so many barriers out of the equation when we can do that.
How
I feel
did
like
you?
a shorter question I was just going to say is, what do you not do? I feel like I'm learning so much about you right now as well.
Yeah, it's funny because our brand is just the Brawley Group. Everything you see in our market, all it says is the Brawley Group. No phone numbers, no websites, no marketing. I did not have a sign on my door for the first 8 years. And, people thought, it's funny because I hear today, just this couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a gentleman, and he said it was a Duke Energy, and that's our local provider. And he was doing a switch out on an electric meter, and we had about 4 trucks there that said the Brawley Group, and he said, "This Brawley Group, man, they're everywhere." He goes, "Do you know them?" And I said, "Yeah, I know those guys." And he said, "Man, where are they from?" They're like, they just came into town like overnight and took over. And I said, "Well, I'm Jeff Brawley. I own the company, and we're not an overnight success. We've actually been in this market for 20 years, actually active in the last 10 years, but only the last 3 years did we put our name out." And he was like, "Oh, I thought you guys were like some outside company and that just came in overnight because you're like so big. Like everywhere I go, I see a Brawley truck." And one of the things we've been talking about internally is we're saying, what does Brawley do, right? Yeah. We have a lot of people that ask us, what does Brawley do? We have people at stoplights that will stop some of our employees and say, "What do you guys do?" And so we're looking at maybe doing a QR code to put on our truck that says, "What does Brawley do?" with a QR code, and then roll out some marketing around that.
Smart. That's like the new way. People are doing that now. Just pull up, hit it.
Yeah.
Hands-free phones, but just in the car.
Yeah, well, with Elon's Neuralink, you could probably just like wink at it and it'll pull up everything.
Yeah.
How important is marketing now that you're seeing some traction with it? How do you feel since you guys haven't been doing it?
Yeah.
How important is marketing?
It's the catalyst that makes everything different. I'll tell you this. It's the difference of me and Grant Cardone. Because when I first met Grant, I said, he doesn't do anything I don't do. Literally, like, he's the same guy that was doing stuff that I was doing 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And the only difference was marketing. That's it. I didn't have a platform. I didn't do any marketing. And he has. And so he's been able to introduce himself to the market and the masses, to the all masses now of media that has put him in the position he is today. But from what he does to what I do, no difference.
He's just more known because of the marketing side.
That's right.
Yeah.
Best known.
Best known beats out best.
Yeah. You got to be a category king in your market and what you do. Yeah. And he is a category king for crowdfunding to get multifamily deals, and everybody else is chasing him if you're doing crowdfunding, or else you're in a different lane of the institutional funds. And
for people who don't know what crowdfunding is, can you explain it basic terms?
Yeah, crowdfunding is we're all sitting here at a table, and the 3 of us all put in money together, and then we've got 2 other groups from outside that we don't know who they are, but they like what we have based upon our promotions, and they want to put money in too. And so the 3 of us might be operating the deal, doing the deal, managing the deal, but the money is coming from other parties, third parties. And so collectively, we can all fund the deal and own it together.
And what would be a benefit of crowdfunding versus going in on your own and purchasing a deal?
Or getting a loan.
Or getting a loan from a bank, yeah.
Well, even on crowdfunding, you can get a loan. But the benefits, there's 2 sides, right? The benefits for the investors of putting the money in is they're getting access to things that they never else would, right? You actually own the asset. It's not like you're buying stock or buying a mutual fund that buys real estate. They get the direct benefits of owning real estate, the tax benefits, the appreciation benefits, cash flow benefits. So from an investor standpoint, it's as close as they can get to owning the real estate themselves without owning it themselves, right? From the operator standpoint, the scale, you can scale a whole lot more. If I could go, and for the first 10 years, I did a lot of deals myself. What's the difference? Me and Grant used other people's money to get there faster, and I didn't. And it wasn't because I was being selfish, like, I don't want people to do that. It was just I didn't put the platform out there to think people were interested in what I was doing. That was the aha moment. People are really interested to know what I do and how I do it now.
How many homes do you have? And how many are investment properties?
Well, let's back up for a second.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Because we're going into the nitty gritty. You mentioned Grant Cardone. That's where we met you, through Cardone events and the real estate event we just saw you at last. Talk about what kind of real estate are most of the people there for? Like the multifamily, the investments. I guess start with the different types. What is multifamily for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so multifamily is apartments. You're going to have a large quantity at one location, and that can be 20 units, 200 units. Typically, you're not going to see more properties with more than 400 and 500 units in one location. So multifamily is all under one roof, but it could be separate properties on the same parcel. So that's really important because you can scale. You can have one office. You can have one maintenance. You can collectively do that on one location. So multifamily is an important piece of our overall category in offerings out there. There's the other pieces are industrial, commercial real estate, and that's Amazon, right? They're a big industrial space, warehousing. You're going to have office, your typical bank office, mortgages, insurance companies. They all want the big offices, right? You go out to Arizona, Scottsdale, you see State Farm, you see Allstate, you see these 30, 40, 50-story buildings. Those are housing, multi-institutional ownership companies.
Yeah.
So other forms of real estate, you've got storage. Self-storage has been a big push in the last 5 years. And it's got the institutional funds have really started to look at it. You have single family, just straight rentals, right? Airbnb people will do in. Commercial real estate. So every market's going to have some commercial real estate, whether it be a strip mall that has, a Starbucks on an end cap or a Pizza Hut on an end cap.
Subways and all those little.
Yeah, you're going to have something. And then, in between, you're going to have a GNC and, probably some cellular company in there. So you're going to see those. And there are a lot of those groups are just built to sell for that. Right. One of the newest categories that's out there is built to rent communities, and that's a single family community, but its whole purpose is they build them to rent them.
Like build a full 60 home subdivision, and they're
60
all
to
rentals.
600.
Yeah.
You're seeing stuff through Florida, Texas, Arizona. Wow. The BTR built to rent. The bigger the scale, the greater success they have, right? But these are all built to rent and owned by one developer for that purpose. And it provides single family traditional living, but as a neighborhood rental.
God,
which we all wanted growing up in like college and school, and you're in apartments and you're like, man, I wish we had a house.
Right.
It's like, now you could do it.
And this isn't rentals that you would, think of as a slumlord rental, right? I mean, there's people that still operate in that environment, and these are nice. These are something that you would go buy yourself, but instead you're renting it. And there's huge benefits to the renter. I mean, people ask me all the time when I'm going to buy a house in Florida, and I say, I'll never buy in Florida. I'll rent in Florida, but I will not buy in Florida for various reasons.
Share a few of them.
The first one is cost of insurance. The cost of insurance, you get no return on your investment.
They just spiked ours up. What? A week ago?
$4,500 we went up this year.
You went up $4,500?
So what did it go
$4,500.
from 5 to 10?
It
like
went from,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
They quoted us, and our house is 40 years old. We've never made a claim. We're not in a flood insurance area or a flood zone.
Yeah,
It's
they're just
completely
like,
remodeled.
Surprise.
Yeah. So that's the first reason. Second is taxes, right? Florida
Property taxes.
Property
Obviously
taxes.
not income taxes.
Yeah, there's no income tax here, and Florida, of course, is one of the destination states for a lot of people. So where does Florida make up their infrastructure is property taxes.
Texas does that too, right? Whenever there's a
Yeah.
state that dangles that no income tax, they hit you with property tax.
They're gonna make
and
their
sales
money.
tax.
Property taxes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They come after you somewhere else.
The third reason I wouldn't buy here is you're chasing a dream. Everybody wants to move to Florida for a dream to live here, but you don't have to own here to have that dream. So we'll do a quick math equation, right? What's an average home cost in Florida?
Depending on the area, but I guess
Yeah.
if we say here, 600,000.
Okay, so let's use 600,000, right? You're going to put 20% down if you're going to buy that, right? I mean, everyone's like, oh, well, it's a residential. You could put 3 or 5%. You could, but then you're going to pay PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. You're going to get hit one way or the other. So let's just do this example of 20% down. So you're $120,000 in down payment, right? Okay, now you've got your insurance. Now you got your taxes. You're going to be year one you can't even look at because it's not real. You're not going to buy and sell a house in the same year, right? So let's look this over a 2-year equation. So in 24 months, you got $120,000 down payment. That's set aside, right? Now you're spending $10,000 a year on insurance. So you're at $20,000 on insurance. Your taxes, you're going to start to put in maintenance, right? Florida homes maintenance, it's outrageous because it's constant upkeep on those homes. From roofing to the air conditioning units to the irrigation, you name it. It's there's a cost associated with that.
Yeah.
Right. So you add maintenance, you add your insurance, you add your taxes, and you're making a mortgage payment, right? On a $600,000 place, you're financed $480,000, you're paying $3,500 a month, right? So now you add up 2 years of payments. We're gonna hit close to $200,000, right? All in. Now, $200,000 will go buy you $1 million worth of property, cash flowing property, income producing property. Your home, your $200,000 that you've sunk, you can sell it. You're going to pay a commission on it, but your sunk cost, right? The cost to put that irrigation in, for your taxes, for your insurance, you get zero return on investment for that. So now your $200,000, you say, well, I'll get my $120,000 back. Great. So how much did you make on your $120,000 through that process over 2 years? You've lost money, right? Because you lost opportunity. So let's take that same equation now. We said we spent $200,000 over the course of 2 years, right? Now you go rent a place for $5,000 a month. You're $120,000 in. All in. No maintenance, no taxes, no insurance, no upkeep. But you took because you didn't have to put $120,000 up. You just paid $5,000 a month. So if you were setting on $120,000, in the beginning, and you just started making rent payments, if you took that $120,000, we used the example you were $200,000 all in, so you borrowed another $80,000, or you got another $80,000 you put in, and you went and bought $1 million worth of property with your $200,000. Same example, 80-20, right? So now you've got a $1 million piece of property that you put $200,000 on, and you own it, and you're making cash flow on it. It's appreciating. You're getting a tax deduction. You're getting depreciation as a tax benefit, right? Your mortgage is paid for because it's being paid out of cash flow. And at the end of 2 years, you've increased rents. You've added value to it. and say you go and recap that. Recap is recapitalization, right? You refinance that after a period of time because you've improved the property. That money that you take out is tax free.
Is this $1 million property in Florida that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Could be. Could be anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You don't have to own property where you live.
Yeah.
So the method of rent where you live and own what you rent is true. When you do the equation on it, it works out every time. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million buy-in, $200,000 buy-in. The math works. And in Florida, the cost of insurance, you can't control. The taxes, you can't control. Rent, you can control to an extent, right? But you can get a lot for $5,000 a month. I mean, you can get nice.
Yes,
you can get your pool. You can get your hot tub. You can get your gym. You can get your coffee at the coffee bars. You can get valet parking. You can get everything you want, and you're out of pocket. It's just one payment a month.
It's funny as people are more scared of that number $5,000 a month than the $3,500 a month. Even
Absolutely.
though in the long run, it's like it's still way less money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've never been taught that. No one teaches you to run the long game.
But on multifamily and the investments, you still have to pay your taxes. You still have to pay the insurance. So would you have that same increase on a property that you're syndicating on as well?
You're going to have taxes. You're going to have insurance. But then that's just figured into your expenses. But you're still going to generate cash flow. You're going to make a return. So when you look at sunk cost, your sunk cost on residential is you'll never get that money back. The cost on a multifamily investment property, that's just operating cost. It's not sunk cost. Your operating cost to operate it, everyone's going to have an operating cost. But what do you do different to make it more valuable, to get more rent? So, every dollar of rent is worth somewhere between $120 and $150 in value. $100,000 of NOI is worth $2 million.
Which, for those listening, is net operating income.
Net operating income.
Yeah. How do you explain NOI to people who
NOI.
have no idea what that is?
Okay, it's just a basic profit and loss statement, right? How much did you make this month? How much did you spend this month? If you just looked at that from a balance sheet, just on a P&L, it doesn't matter if you've got 40 lines or 400 lines, you still have a bottom line. And on your bottom line, did you make more than you spent? And at the end of the day, your NOI is your net operating income, which is the difference of your profit and your expenses. So real estate is valued on a net operating income. So your ability to control your expenses is sometimes greater than what your ability to increase your rent is. So when you look at an asset, has it been poorly operated? Have they mismanaged it? Are they spending money where they shouldn't be spending money? On the top line, on rents, are they getting the most out of what they should for that asset? So that's all in multifamily, the way to look at a balance sheet. But NOI comes down to is what a value is. And anytime you have an appraisal on a property done, they're going to give you a cost approach and they're going to give you income approach. Your cost approach is what does it cost to actually build this asset? That's it. Materials, nails, lumber, flooring, roofing. What's it cost to build that today? Your income approach is how much does the property make? And that's going to give you a value based upon the expenses. And so property gets traded based upon value of income. Residential property gets valued on your cost approach. That's it. And there's going to be some rise and fall in the markets and demand. Do you live on a golf course? Do you live on the beach? Some property is going to be more valuable than other property just based upon location.
And when you own a multifamily versus the residential and the golf course, you get to dictate a little more of the value, right? Talk about like how a comp of your neighbor could sell something and ruin your value.
Yeah.
But if you own a property, talk about how you can actually raise the rent, which adds value.
Yeah. So you've got to control the environment. When you own them all, you can control the environment, right? You don't own your neighbor's houses. You can't control what happens in those neighbors' houses, good or bad, right? There's always going to be that neighbor on the block that is bad. And you're always going to have that neighbor on the block that brings everybody else up. But it doesn't, the one that brings it up, the one that brings it down brings it farther down. Right? So it's the same in condo developments, right? In a condo development, it's the biggest red flag to buy in a condo development, right? You can't control what your neighbor does in that property first. Second, you can't control what they sell it for. So they might decide to sell it for half the market value just because they're desperate or it was an estate sale. There was something that's going on. And so when people look at the valuation, same square footage, same view, but it traded at less than half of what the market value is, why? And that's, once it's on the books, right? It's black and white. It's in the paper. Yeah. It's in the records. People are going to justify that to being the market value then. So when you own the whole block, you can control, like in a built-to-rent community, you can control, the environment. But in an apartment complex, you can control all of those apartments, not just the one you live in, because those are the situations where, let's not say first-time investment buyers, but usually first-time investment buyers are going to find a condo, and they're going to think, hey, this thing rents for X, and it's fantastic. That's great.
We have friends that do it. We talk about it too, because it's like,
right?
That it depends where you are, but you got to get in the market at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the guy next door, he bought in too.
Yeah.
But now his renter left him and he's desperate to get a new renter. So what's the first thing he does then when he's desperate?
Lowers the rent.
Lowers the rent. It's the worst thing you can do ever to a property. Once you lower the rent, you're going to attract a different market share, different market person, a different clientele.
It lowers the worth of your property immediately.
Right.
If someone's willing to pay
and so,
less.
So now, the property next door, exact same floor plan, exact same view, is renting for, $1,500 a month, and you were at $2,000 a month. Well, so what, right? Well, now everybody starts to go, well, they're not going to bring their properties up to $1,500 or to $2,000. People are going to start to lower their prices to $1,500 because they realize, well, I don't have to make it near as nice. Well, what's that mean? Well, I'm not going to replace the roof. I'm not going to replace the flooring. I'm not going to replace this. And they think that the value is not replacing the property, yet they'll make more money on it. And the actuality is you end up being that slumlord.
Yeah.
Talk about how you can control the environment in like a multifamily deal.
Yeah.
Because you can raise rent by, you can only be $20 and a renter doesn't even question that.
Oh, absolutely not. People aren't going to move. People won't move over $100 a month, right? Mm-hmm. You think about the process of moving. The cost of moving is extremely not what people think it is, right? People think, well, it's a truck and some guys and a couple things and some boxes and we're going to move and my buddies are going to help.
Still a pain in the ass.
Right? To move a single family home, I mean, I'm gonna shoot for the hip, but it's probably, you can't do it for less than $10,000, right? And then you have your utility cost and your storage and wherever you're going to put your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And there is a large amount of cost to move, right? And then the other thing, people don't want the inconvenience of it, right? That's the world we live in. Everybody wants convenience. So on a multifamily project you were mentioning, so if you have 100 units and you raise each by $25, doesn't seem like a lot. People aren't going to move on that. But you just immediately added value to that property by raising the rent $25.
So that's $2,500 a month times 12.
Right.
The math's not that good to do that next one.
Well, that's each month, yeah.
That's how you add value.
Yeah, so you're at $30,000, right? You added $30,000 to your bottom line
each month.
Just by adding $25.
Yes.
When I was living in LA, if it was under $200, we weren't leaving. I mean, even more than that, but $25, I wouldn't even blink an eye.
Well, because you have to do your deposits, you have to do your security, and then you have to do your cleaning. And in LA, it's totally different. Yeah. They'll rip you for every single thing. If there's a back on the wall, they're going to charge you for
Yeah,
it.
you're
So
never
you're
getting
more
your
than likely
deposit
not
back.
getting your deposit. Whereas
Right.
in Miami, when we lived down there, we got most of it back.
She ruined the wall and we got all of it back.
They left the paint for us to
Yeah.
like fix any
To
things
fix
that
it?
we did. Yeah. And we lived there for 2 years and I didn't know that
the
paint
day
settles.
of move out, she tried to paint the spots in the
Sure,
wall.
that's how it
So-
always happens.
But I was
That's,
like, oh, I'll just.
that's a podcast called Managing Chaos.
Yeah,
that
we
was.
should do.
So I painted the walls and then we went back and realized that the paint changes colors over 2 years. I didn't know that.
yeah.
So we had this giant
The
block.
wall was like 50 feet long and she only did like 20 feet of it. And we had to be out in like 30 minutes. I'm like, just leave it. We
Yeah.
got
So we
none of
lost some of that. But anyway, the whole point is, when you're moving, there's all those costs that go involved for
absolutely.
renters. But go ahead. What were you?
Yeah, so that $25 per month increase on 100 units, you added $600,000 in value.
How'd you get there?
So
People can do it with
yeah, so the math on that was $2,500 a month times 12 is $30,000 of NOI. And then I used a 5 cap rate, which is a value weighting indicator, right, of market rate. And you divide 30,000 by 5%, and that gave 600,000 in value. So
Amazing.
just one thing, when you looked at that, you raised $600,000 by increasing rent $25, and no one's going to move over $25.
So if it increases value on a property, how does a syndicator depreciate the property if you're continuing to add more value to the property?
Right. Depreciation is an oxymoron word these days, right? Because depreciation on a car is bad. Depreciation on a real estate asset is good. It's very good. And it's one of the only things that the IRS or the government has right. And by owning investment properties on your books, so this is just on paper. This isn't on your bank account. But on paper, you get to depreciate the value of that asset over a period of time. Won't get into the long and the short of it, but there's 2 methods. There's straight line method, which is 27 and a half years on residential investment properties. Commercial properties is 37 and a half years. I think 37, maybe 36 and a half years.
Is that whenever you buy it and sell it, or is that over the lifetime of the property?
So once you buy it, your basis is set at that.
Okay.
So if you bought the property for $10 million and this was a asset for 26 and a half years depreciation, each year you depreciate that amount, right? The 26 and a half years of that. So that's 26,500, right?
And it
So-
starts over with each owner.
Starts over with each owner.
That's cool.
Now, what this does is the government says the value of that asset will depreciate because it's going to need to be replaced over time. And that's why the straight line method is 27 and a half years. But there's a product called cost segregation, which you can go in and say that the roof is going to last 30 years. Okay, great. The floor is going to last 5 years. The cabinets are going to last 10 years. Your doors are going to last 10 or 15 years. And there's a method that you go through and you break down every piece of your property into a bucket. And it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, 30 years. And then you get to take that depreciation. This gets a little overhead. This is like, level 300 classes.
Mm-hmm.
But depreciation is what you get to deduct from your earned income on your tax return, on your personal tax return. All LLC income passes through to your personal tax return, right? So when your business makes money, whether you take it out and put it in your pocket or not, you're getting taxed on it because you're the owner of that LLC. The LLCs do not pay taxes, right? So it's all called pass-through. So as you go to your pass-through to your personal tax return, you get to deduct if you're the active owner, active participate in that real estate, you get to deduct the depreciation allocated from that year for that asset to your personal tax return. And so you're taking off your earned income using methods called depreciation to reduce your taxable income. At the end of the day, it's a tax savings, right? And when you say tax savings, what does that mean? That means you pay less than you would have if you didn't have that asset owned. So it's hard to put that all into words. It's very explainable when you can show someone the method of how you get to it on a real tax return. I show people my tax returns all the time because people I sit down with, investors I sit down with, and they're paying $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year in personal taxes. And I show them how they can go from that to zero. Now, they'll go through the 7 stages of grief
Yeah.
to get to that point. The denial, you can't do that. Acceptance, let's do it. But there's ways to get to it. And owning real estate is, again, one of the only things that the IRS and the government has always done right to keep it. And they won't get rid of it. It would collapse the real estate investment platform.
The mindset we all were taught, is save, get out of debt. But there's actually a way where you're talking about with the taxes and using debt as leverage in all these deals. How is debt a good thing when it comes to these big projects that you get a part of?
Yeah, so debt is basically a leverage, right? And you can apply this to, say you're an engineer, right? As an engineer, you want to use a factor that is a weight, right? There's a weighted balance, right? If one thing is weighted more than the other, you're going to be off balance, right? As an engineer, they're calculating always the equilibrium part or something through that, right? And our banking world is built on lending money. If there was no money lent out to others, the banks would not make money.
We're keeping them afloat.
Yeah. So the banks make money by loaning other people money. Car loans, home loans, investment property loans are a big one, right? I mean, you do 10 home loans, or you could do 1 investment loan. It's going to be the same, right? It's the math, the 80-20 rule, right? Most of the banks, their loans are in commercial lending. That's where they can have 20 clients versus 2,000 clients that own a home. So they would rather have 20 clients that they know really, really well and are great operators than 2,000 clients, because it's just the scale of working with 2,000 clients versus 20. So commercial lending is where all banks make their money. And when you use debt, it is a 4-letter word, but it's not the 4-letter word. It's bad, right? It's good. Debt is good. Debt gives you a leverage where we used the example before, right? The 200,000. If you're going to go buy $1 million property, if you put 20% down, that's 200,000, right?
So now you're 800,000 in debt.
You're $800,000 in debt
to the bank.
To the bank.
Okay.
The bank is taking interest on that every month, and that's how they make their money. So be it, right? You're making money. You're making cash flow. So they're making money.
The idea for cash flow is you're making more monthly money than the interest, so you're always making a little off top of what the bank's making.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where you've got to make cash flow to make a deal work. You can't be continuing to fund. Mm-hmm. And in today's environment, a bank will not let you get negative. They will not do a loan. It's cut and dry. After 2008, the banking industry definitely changed, right? In Dodd-Frank rules and 14,000 pages of new rules of things. But before that, I mean, you could go get a loan. It was so simple to get a loan, right? And that's why we got to where we were in 2008. If you said you qualified, they believed you. That was it.
So everybody was foreclosures left and right.
And so the everybody who rented was like, why am I renting? I'm going to go own. And the thing that changed it was it became a right to own a home versus a privilege to own a home. And so when it became a right to own a home, everybody said, oh, you have the right to own a home, so therefore we're going to do 0% down, 3% down, versus it was a privilege to own a home, and you got the opportunity to buy that home with 20% down or 10% down, but not 3 or 5%, right? So bad apples, a lot of bad mortgage guys were out there. And it was easier to get a home loan than it was to get a barbershop license. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? And people were out there just making moves that they knew that they were going to fail, but they didn't care because it wasn't going to hurt them.
What was the incentive for like bankers to just be handing these out?
The banks were they were happy, right? Balance sheets were fat.
Oh, because it felt good, and
They felt good, right?
and they had nothing. Nothing bad could happen to them, essentially.
Nothing bad, right? A banker owns nothing. The bank owns everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a human factor there. That banker is a person. That banker is making decisions. That banker has no repercussions if the bank fails or if the mortgage fails. They might lose their job, but do they have any financial harm? Zero. So what prevents a good banker from a bad banker? What's the difference, right?
Mm.
Well, this wasn't all associated to banking, right? Because the mortgage brokers
Yeah.
is really where this got into. Mortgage brokers were taking bundles and they were packaging them together and then selling them as a loan package. You know, here's 50 loans. They bundle it up, they sell it off for residential properties. Well, 80% of those are going to be bad loans. Bad loan means they stop paying, right? You can't build a business model when your 80% of your clientele is not paying the rent. So when that happened, there's reason why there was a collapse, and that's why people ask me today, "Are you worried about real estate?" And the answer is no, because there's zero chance of a lender letting you to get into a deal where they're going to get stuck with it. They realized after '08, we're not getting stuck with these assets. So loans, investment property loans, today are made on debt service coverage ratio, DSCR. That means that property needs to be producing 125% of income versus expenses. So you have to have a plus up of 25% on your income. And if it doesn't, they're not going to loan you the money until you just put more money down. So in that circumstance, instead of being 80% debt, you might have to go to 60% debt or 50% debt.
Which is where you might crowdfund or get some partners. Or,
Well, right. But even at that, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, it's too much money down.
Well, yeah. I mean, your leverage is the key to being successful on a deal.
True.
But the back up on that is buying the deal is where you make your money. Exiting is just the result of it. You have to buy the deal right. And if you don't, it's a cause and effect. If you bought the deal wrong, the exit's going to be wrong. If you bought the deal right, the exit's going to be right. Mm-hmm. So that's playing the long game again. People are too eager to jump into deals these days because they think it's easy money.
Mm-hmm.
So all those are factors for the DSCR, the cap rate. You have mathematical equations before you even come close to closing a deal.
Bro, yeah, closing a deal is not as simple as what people think.
You go years looking at stuff.
Well, it's not always years. You're looking at stuff every day, but you start to see the metrics, right? And data doesn't lie. That's a great thing about commercial real estate. The data does not lie. And if you follow the data and not emotions, it will lead you on the right path every time. And data is what makes commercial real estate so much easier for people because you remove the emotion. Now, there's a lot of people in commercial real estate or investment property real estate, they lose that factor, right? Mm-hmm. They're emotionally attached to the outcome. If you're thinking about getting into investment properties and you're emotionally attached, you're in the wrong game.
Mm-hmm. So what do you look for when you look at deals? What would be the maybe 3 or 5 main things you go after?
First is the asset, right? How good is the asset itself? Deferred maintenance, does every air conditioner need to be replaced? Does the roof need to be replaced? Are the appliances 20 years old? Mm. Is the flooring 20 years old? How much capital do I need to put into this to raise the rents? If I continue to operate this exactly the same way they have, why would I be any different? Now, the second thing I look at is the operator. How good of an operator were they? And that tells there's more upside usually on the operator than on the asset itself. And what I mean by that is they've owned it for a long time. They have zero debt on it. They do not want to increase rents. They're happy. They've paid this thing off. They're getting their monthly check. And you got to realize when they paid this thing off, it was probably 10, or they probably owned it for 20 or 30 years or more. So the money they're making today versus 30 years ago, they're super happy, right? So they don't care about increasing the rent. What they care about is not having to touch it, right? So on the asset itself, if it's someone who's owned it for a long time and they've just maintained it, not done anything extra, and they've got a great location, well, there's upside. There's going to be upside because if you take a great location and you put new amenities on it, people are willing to pay more for it.
Then you can justify raising that rent.
Right. People will pay for added value. They will not pay more for the same thing. So when you look at that asset, it's, what's the bones of it? What's the location of it? If it's hard to get to, it's going to be hard to sell. It's going to be hard to rent, right?
So location is really important.
Location is still, in 100 years, the three most important things about real estate is location, location, location. And 100 years ago, it was location, location, location. It's not going to change. And again, if you look at the fundamentals and the data of it, it will always lead you to the correct answers.
So you syndicate all of your projects, right? Is that a true statement?
I would say we syndicate probably 50% of our projects.
When you first purchased your very first property, how scary was it for you?
My first property I purchased, 2362 South Henderson,
Single
in
family
1994. It was a condo. It was a townhome for $69,000. And I spent the summer mowing. I worked a full-time job, but then I mowed on nights and weekends to collect, and got $3,000 saved up, right? To buy that property. I signed the lease for that property before I signed the final purchase agreement because I was concerned. What if this thing doesn't rent? What if? But what I knew was I had a signed lease agreement in my hand. I was in the real estate broker's office. I met the tenant there to sign the lease. And so he came in, signed the lease. So I knew I had a tenant that was going to pay me X. And now I signed the purchase agreement to buy it. And I was upside. I was making money day one. Now, what did I learn from that? I learned that you don't want to own in a condo. You don't want to own a townhome because you can't control your neighbors. You can't control their rent. You can't control what they do, right? So all that was that, learn it before you earn it method. I had to replace the flooring. I had to pay the HOA fees, right? Homeowners association fees, which again, you can't control. And it was definitely a process that, I'll tell you this. What makes a person different to go out and start with that versus learning from someone else, their years of experience, and starting off at a right level, right? So what I started in 1994, if I knew what I know today, I would have never bought that property. But I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a training. What I had was a real estate agent saying this was a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, to full circle, like you said, when you say real estate industry, it's a lot of different facets of it. Because we know real estate agents, we were trying to talk to them about this, and no clue what multifamily even meant.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
So you bought the condo.
Yeah.
You were paying HOAs. Were you making money on it, or were you negative?
No, I was making money on it.
Okay.
I was renting it for $700 a month. My mortgage payment was $335 a month.
Plus, and is that including HOA?
HOA was $75 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So, some taxes and a couple things in there. So it was costing me all in $5, probably under, $450 to $500 a month all in.
Had a couple $100 in your pocket every month.
$200.
Here, close.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there you go.
$200 a month free cash flow, right?
Uh-huh.
That was fantastic, right? I mean, I only put $3,000 down. So for me, I mean, it might have been $3,500 on it.
An example of using debt as leverage
Yeah.
from day one. Probably
Yeah.
didn't even have this mindset, and you were doing it right a little bit.
And so I lived about a half mile from that asset in my personal home that I bought. That was the first purchase I made, was my personal home. And I rented out rooms, actually, in my personal home to fraternity brothers. They all had, semester left. They were doing their senior final lap, or, they're on their 5th year, and they wanted to live something different. So I started making money on renting my rooms out in my personal home. And then I took that money along with my other money and bought that investment property.
You're kind of multifamily, just spread out in different different areas.
Yeah, and then I did buy my first single family rental a short time after that.
How was that compared to the condo?
The cash flow was so much better, right?
Without the HOA or anything.
Well, without the HOA, but I could make improvements to that asset, both internally and externally.
You were managing all of these on your own as
Yes.
well at the time? Okay.
Yeah, like on a single family home, I mean, you can control the environment, what it looks like, what it feels like, what the outside looks like. On a condo, you can't touch the outside. Usually, it's you can't paint it the color you want. They all look the same. So you can have 10 in a row, and they might have 10 different rents. They might have 10 different owners.
Yeah. 10 different
Yeah.
shades of gray is like
Yeah.
the only colors you can
Right.
use on the mailbox, like ridiculous stuff like
So
that.
you have 3 doors at this point. What made you jump into apartments?
Right. The apartments became a world of scale, right? You just do the math. Again, it goes back to the data. If I have one asset or 3 assets, right, and one of them's empty, I'm at 66% rented. I have 100 apartments and I have 3 empty, 97% rented. Difference, right? So you have an insulation there, and it's all the economies of scale. If I raise rent on 10 of them because I improved 10 of them, they're going to bring 10 better clients. Now, it doesn't mean I have to, better clients bring better neighbors into that asset. So better neighbors bring people a reason to stay around versus a reason to leave, right? And so you can increase somebody's rent by just improving the surroundings and not doing anything internally to that property. So there's so much more that you can do to add value on a multifamily than on a single family. Now, single family, a lot of people say, you shouldn't be buying single families, but they have a place in our investment portfolio, and I think they're a really great asset if you're managing and you're buying the right asset. I have a true belief that there's a difference in rental property and investment properties, and people will of course ask, what's the difference? Well, a rental property, the methodology is it pays for itself, and they're happy. The guy, Uncle Joe, owns 10 rentals, and he's getting $700 a month on it. He's happy. Well, the furnace goes out. He's replacing that. The roof is bad. He's replacing that. The water heater is bad. He's replacing that. The refrigerator is bad. He's replacing that. Okay. If you take that and then you took the money on his 7 and you put that into a multifamily, your value is going to be considerably higher going up. You're increasing the value of, say it was a 30 units. Well, you've got 30 times of opportunity to raise rents versus 7 times. Now you say, well, you got 30 refrigerators. Sure, you do. But that $700, you were happy paying the rent. They were just paying the mortgage. You're lucky if you break even. And you're not going to get appreciation on those. Your 30 that you raised them by $25, and the next year you raised them $25, and next year you raised them by $25. You're going to be money ahead. And a rental property methodology is we break even. They pay the debt, right? And on investment property, your buy-in is higher. It's going to be considerably higher, but your value, your appreciation, and your opportunity to make more money is significantly greater over time. And you're making an investment. A rental property is someone's renting it from you. And you don't look at it as a true investment. They just look at it as it pays the debt.
It's great breakdown on both of those.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So does that mean that you are a believer in people wanting single family homes as not as rentals, but as investments?
As investments,
if
right?
so, do you think they should slowly get as many as they can? Because one house, like you said, renter is gone.
Yeah. If you want to add value, I don't care if it's on a multifamily or a single value, you add value to that asset, you're going to get a better renter. Every time. Mm-hmm. If you say, I'm not going to put $1 in this and I'm willing to take less money for it, you're going to lose every time, right? Every single time it happens. I've had people come to me and say, hey, can you help me? I'm like, what'd you do? Well, I lowered the rent. Well, that's the first mistake you made.
Yeah.
I have property owners that come to me and they tell me, listen, I'd love for you to manage my property. Our property management division, we have 200 million assets under management. And people come to me and I say, well, there's 3 things that you must do in order for me to manage your property. 1, you're in this for the long haul, not the short game. 2, you own multiple units or you want to buy multiple units. And 3, you will put money back into that unit every time we say you will. And if they can't say yes to all 3 of those, I can't manage their property. The reason is, if they're not in for the long haul, they're looking at expenses on a short run, right? When I say we got to put new flooring in this, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, the question should be, how much am I going to make?
Right. Mm-hmm. Shifting the perspective.
What kind of floor are we putting in?
That's right. The other piece is, they just want to buy the one asset. Well, they probably inherited it. It was left. It wasn't a rental property to begin with. It's stock. They can't sell it, so they want to make it a rental. They're not true in it for the long haul. They're not true in for an investment. And so those are the pieces that differentiate someone who says I'm in for investments or if I'm just in to solve a problem. I'm not here to be a savior. I can't fix people's problems. I can solve some of their problems, but I can't fix if their mindset is X.
Right. You can't fix the mindset.
Right. And there's got to be a shift.
Like a shifting of a focus.
That's right. Shifting focus.
Now, you also do college rentals and
student housing.
Student housing.
Housing.
Some people would say don't even get involved in student housing. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You have a different approach. Can you share some insight on that?
Yeah, so student housing is kind of like a bad rap, right? When you say that, and people first of all are like, "What is student housing?" Student housing can be various things. One, it can be a single family that's rented to students, or it can be a multifamily that's rented to students. But in the end, you're renting to people who are in college. That's it, right? It doesn't matter if they're in a community college or, a tier 1 university, but they're going to pay based upon location. You could take the exact same floor plan of an apartment and put it on the edge of campus and put it 10 miles away from campus. The one that's on the edge of campus is going to get more money, way more money. It's the exact same floor plan and amenities, everything, but the distance from campus, right? So what people are afraid of student assets is they're going to break it. They're going to destroy it. Well, those renters have the means, the parents, to pay for it, right? On a student property, you're not leasing to the tenant or to the students. You're leasing to the parents. They're signing the lease.
Yeah, for the most part.
They're financially liable for that asset.
Yeah, they all co-signed basically by parents on
Yes.
almost
Do you
every
require?
single.
Yeah. Do you
Yes.
require a cosign?
Absolutely.
Oh, no, that's smart.
Well, I would
Yeah.
assume no 17, 18-year-olds for the most part can even
Financial
sign
work.
off
I mean, I
on it.
did. Well, for most colleges, you have to do a dorm.
We're not all that
Well,
advanced.
in a dorm,
I wasn't advanced. I just had no choice.
in a dorm, it's a different methodology, right?
Exactly.
They're going to take your money. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't run a credit check on you before they accept you to college.
They're
They
shoving you all in those little boxes. You share the shower in the hallway.
And a lot of the dorms require it through your financial aid, or they include it in your
Education.
educational payments. Yeah, I don't know. What that's
Absolutely.
called. I haven't been to college in a
Well,
while.
but they control the outcome, right?
Yeah.
They get the money first, and they give you what's left over.
So if somebody damages your property as a student, how often do you run into that, by the way? Is that
Every year.
common? You do? Okay.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
common. Do the parents have to pay additional to the deposit, or how do you fix?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. We have we'll do, we'll move out 1,000 students in August, right? During a 2-week period, we'll move out 1,000 people and move in 1,000 people. Now that's chaos in itself.
It's a big turnover.
Sure
Right.
is.
Now, what happens? There's so many storylines that go through student housing, right? But at the end of the day, it's the same thing as you fixing that wall, like in your place you moved out of. Did they paint it? Did they paint it right? And did you deliver the asset when you left the same way as it was delivered, or better? That's a simple answer, yes or no. Now, what happens is there's a discrepancy of what they consider better, right? And in this world, we live by video, photos, everything, right? Someone's perception of is it good or bad isn't made up until they make it up in their head. But if you looked at a photo of something that's broken, say the door's been kicked in, you can clearly agree that the door's been kicked in.
I'm going to take a guess that there's a lot of door damage in dorms, or not even dorms,
Punching
student
holes
housing.
in walls.
Yeah.
The most broken doors are the most common, right? Flooring, it'll get trashed, absolutely.
Beer spilled on it and
Yeah,
stupid.
they have no effort to clean up, right? There's zero. Like
Just step
you
right
just,
over
you
it.
just spill it, it doesn't matter. Trash bags, they walk over it, right?
Do you let pets in your student housing?
Oh boy, pets, it's another story.
All right, we'll stick to this for now. We'll keep
on.
moving.
I mean, I've only got today.
I have so many.
right.
We'll have to come back and do it
Yeah.
again. We have so many questions for you.
Yeah, so damages will happen, right? But at the end of the day, the parents are the ones who signed the lease, and if you're going to sue, you're suing not the kid. The kid signed it. He doesn't have the income. It's the parents, and for what it's going to cost, they don't want to screw with it, right? I'll give you an example. A parent told me. She said, for my kid, for me to pay $1,000 a bed, you don't lease. There's some places that lease by the bed, right? On a single family home, you don't lease by the bed. It's just the rooftop, right? Say it's a 5-bed house. Typically on a 5-bed house in our market, you're $1,000 a bed, $5,000 a month for a 5-bedroom house. Pretty simple math. Now, what they pay internally, I don't care. There might be one that pays a little bit more, a little less, but they pay me one payment of $5,000 a month. I don't care who it comes from. They could take turns of who pays. I don't care. What I want is $5,000 in my account on the first, and it happens. They set it up on auto pay. Perfect, great. Don't think about it. Now, at the end of that, what they're going to say was Susie's boyfriend punched that hole in that wall. He owes for it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Susie's mom did that. You still owe on it.
Well, you see Susie, he cheated on her and then he was mad.
There's a
and
story. There's a
yeah,
story
there's a
behind
story.
it.
I don't care.
There's so many stories, right?
Yeah.
Send the check.
So, which parent do you go after? How
All
do you
of them.
figure? Okay.
It's all of them. It's collectively. It's a joint severable lease. It's on page 1, bold print. This is a joint and severable lease. Any parent listening, you sign. You're responsible whether that your kid caused the damage or not, whether a guest caused the damage or not. Anything that happens within those 4 walls of that property is your responsibility during the term of that lease.
Smart.
You hear that, parents? Try to talk them out of the party at their house.
Yeah.
Do it at someone
luck.
else's.
How many parents have said, my kid's not going to party?
My kid would never do that. Jeff.
Right.
I've got pictures that tell something else.
Do you build your student housing in top quality, or do you just manage it, kind of get it by, make sure it's
We build them. We try to, when we build new, we try to build them bulletproof.
okay? Literally.
Yeah. I mean, concrete floors, right? We'll do stained concrete floors, very trendy. We'll do fiber cement walls versus standard drywall. They're gonna break their knuckles before they put a hole in the wall, right? The upfront cost is a little bit more, but the repair cost is a lot better. And so why is that different to us? Well, every time we have to touch it, yeah, they're going to pay for it, but it's not we don't make money on it. We just have
Right.
to repair it.
Yeah, so the next person could come in.
Yeah.
And it's also your time
Yeah.
getting all the materials. I'm sure it's difficult.
Yeah. Getting
Sometimes.
things to patch and match. And it's just the chaos, right? Plus,
Yeah.
we have 2 weeks.
Turn and burn.
1,000 of these
Yeah.
students.
And
have
you do it right
yeah.
the first time, top quality. You don't
Yeah.
have to play with it all the time.
Right.
What
So,
would you, go ahead.
no, it's just, we build them. When we actually do a student property built for students, it's a whole different methodology, right? Hallway closets, forget them. They're useless.
Because you're not sharing a bunch of stuff like
Well, they're not gonna hang coats in them, right? They're gonna bust something up, cases of beer, and stuff it in their trash. They do not. I mean, every inch of space that you use on a student asset, you want it for like living space, not for closet space, not for I'm gonna make this a coat room or a pantry.
that. So they need somewhere to sleep, somewhere to hang out, somewhere to go to the
Right.
bathroom.
They want a bedroom and a bathroom and a hangout spot.
Yeah.
So, that's what we cater to. You want a big island, so they can drink at. They're going to play games at.
Flip cup.
Flip cup,
Beer pong.
beer pong, you name it. Whatever the game of the century is.
That's right.
Game of the decade is. I don't know. But
Sounds like fun. Sounds like a
Yeah.
fun market.
it's I'll warn anybody who's thinking about it. You do not operate a student asset the same as a multifamily asset.
Smoking.
Well, yes.
Meh.
It does not matter what the lease says. They're going to do what they want to do.
Right.
Right? Do not throw chairs off the balcony. They will throw chairs off the balcony. Right?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what it says, right? You just have to be prepared for what's going to happen. And that doesn't mean emotionally. That means on paper. When they throw that chair off and it hits a car, right? Who's liable, right?
The parents?
When they light a trash can on fire,
Oh my God.
when they overflow the toilet and let it run for 3 days before they call, where they have a party, right? I'm not against parties, right? But if you have 100 people in the living room and you break the floor joist, you collapse the floor, that's your responsibility.
This has happened to you?
These are all true stories.
Oh my God.
Isn't it recently the balcony collapsed on somebody's apartment too?
I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
sure.
and unfortunately,
died then.
someone died.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Uh-huh.
That's the unfortunate things that happen in student assets where they don't know what they don't know, right? Was it their fault that they had 40 people on the balcony and no one told them? Or there was a sign there that said 40 people, no more than 40 people, or 20 people? You're not going to put 40 people on a balcony, right?
Well, you think you wouldn't, but I'm sure.
You also think people aren't going to eat Tide Pods, but
Yeah,
look
but-
at where we are today.
Yeah. So, and I, I've had dead bodies in multifamily properties. Unfortunately, I've never had a student die in an asset, and everybody that has died. And if you're in business long enough, you're going to have deaths, but all natural causes. And at the end of the day, you have to have protocols in place for everything that happens, right? Fire, tornado, death. There has to be a protocol that you follow, because once you get emotionally involved, you have to remove yourself, because you can't effectively run a business or operate in that world, right? Because everybody that's coming at you, the parents, lawyers, they're all emotionally attached,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And so do we have a lot of lawyers? Absolutely. I mean, everyone's parent has an attorney or is the attorney. But at the end of the day, parents, read the lease. I don't know how many lawyers that have signed leases for their kids and come back and say, well, what about this? And it's like, you signed the lease. I know I did, but what about this? Well, it's like, did you read the lease? No, I didn't. This is
yeah.
how leasing happens on student properties, right? Mom, dad, you're going to get a phone call, not a text message, because they only call when it's an emergency, right? When they need you to do something. They need you to sign this lease right now and make a deposit of $1,000 right now. Well, what about, nope, I need it right now, right? And girls, they're going to call their dads. They're going to call their dad every time. Dad, I got to have this place today. What does dad do? He signs the lease. Exactly. Make the payment, and they don't think about it again for 3 or 4 or 5 months, 6 months. Typically, our places are leased about 12 to 18 months in advance. That's the difference, too, of a student asset and a multifamily. Multifamily, you could drive up today, and they're going to give you a showing, and you could probably move in next week. On a student asset, we're leased a year, 2 years in advance. We already know who our clients are. They're students. We already know where they're coming from, the university. And they know our assets better than we do. They'll typically come to us and say, I want this place right here. We'll say, do you want to see it? Nope. I don't need to see it. I've already been there. I've been there at a party.
I want it.
So
I want
true.
it. Right?
I guess that's a real positive when it comes to student housing. You know your clientele is there every year
That's right.
because you're not
Well,
trying to fill a place up in an apartment complex.
Maybe. So that was another question I had too with COVID. What do you do? Because people probably think that when it comes to student housing, we didn't anticipate the pandemic. And
The banks, they wanted to see heads on beds before they would do any lending. The banks froze on student housing. Everyone's freaked out. I freaked out, right? Well, phone calls started coming in. You're not sending my kid home, are you? No, we're not sending your kid home. Good. Keep him there.
we'll keep them there to work to do remote learning
Well, yeah, that too.
at their house.
And the kids didn't want to go home, right?
Big part of
So
COVID, everyone was.
I started
talked about
watching
not getting
deposits
rent.
come in, March 28th, 29th. I was tracking daily. Usually we start collecting rents about the last 5 days of the month. They'll start to come in. So I was tracking month over month where we were, and we were right on pace.
Yeah.
We went through April 1 hit, everybody paid.
Which is
May
right
hit,
when it happened.
everybody paid. June hit, everybody paid. The thing was, COVID didn't affect students from a financial. Like, the parents already knew kids were in school. They weren't like, oh, I didn't know.
I didn't save for this.
I didn't save for this. They already knew that they were paying rent. There was no change in their financial well-being with COVID, without COVID. Zero.
So true. It's
They all
stuff you
paid.
Didn't even
Think
think
about
about.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's smart thinking.
So in the end, the thing that changed with COVID of us is we had to go to more remote leasing because we couldn't get into properties. People still use that today. We had a showing last week at a property. People showed up. They're like, oh, we have COVID. They want to use that still as an excuse that you can't come into the property.
It's a tactic now.
Yeah. My girlfriend's got COVID. She's here. All right.
Then why is she not home? That's your first
Yeah.
question.
So the things that we had to change during COVID was, we had to get really, really good at doing video content on leasing. Everything became video walkthroughs. Mm-hmm. There was no in-person walkthroughs, which is fine. I mean, we lease to people all the time, sight unseen. Mm-hmm. They'll book a place. One, they've been to it before. Or two, they'll walk through it. But what they're looking for is walking distance to campus. Does it have parking? Does it not have parking? Do they need a vehicle or not need a vehicle? So, but COVID affected us from a financial standpoint negatively, zero.
Great. It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
It actually showed the value of the asset to the point where, BlackRock just became, they went from not even in student housing to number 3 in the country in student housing. They put
they saw
$13 billion.
So they saw your game plan and was like, oh,
It's lucrative.
that's
Yeah.
lucrative.
Yeah.
We need to.
They tipped their toe in and said, we like this. I think they bought $1 billion, and they said, oh, we like this. And then they went in at $13 billion.
Wow. So
So-
there's something to it.
Yeah.
Did you find that students who would typically go home during the summer months were staying and even renewing their leases so they'd had a place to stay?
All of our leases are for 50 weeks. So our 2-week cycle for turnover. But, whether they stay for the summer or not doesn't determine whether they pay or not.
They're still paying.
They're still paying, right? I mean, when people, every time I go through the experience of talking about student assets to someone, say, have you had a kid go through college? I say, yeah. I said, what was it like? Oh, this is what it's like. They say they call and make the payment, and there it was, and they moved in, and place was nasty and dirty, and they moved out, and this place was nasty and dirty, and they moved into another place. And at the end of the day, it's just a process.
Yeah.
And what we know is universities are not going away, because some of them might go away, right? I don't disagree that some universities might close. Tier 1, institutional, top-tier universities will not go away. NCAA sports are not going to go away.
It's a great point.
Right?
Because people like to think,
Too much money in there.
Well, Grant talks
Walls.
about that too, right? He says over time, kids are going to stop going to get education. But the sports part, that's very
Vegas
important.
is probably equally stronger than Wall Street when it comes to the game.
Sports betting.
Right. I didn't
Sports
think
betting
about
in
that.
NCAA is huge.
Paying college athletes coming up, like endorsements. It's
Right.
it's only getting better for the student athlete.
Yeah. So the universities are not going to go away if they are a top tier athletic school.
It might change, but it won't go away.
Right.
Sure.
Right. And you can follow the data when a team or school wins a national championship, their enrollment goes up.
I believe.
Whether in football or basketball, it doesn't matter. You can track for the last 20 years schools that won a national championship football, basketball, and their enrollment the next 2-3 years goes up.
UConn.
Maybe that's why my school was so cheap,
Baylor.
affordable.
Yeah, she tells people University of Tennessee.
It is the University of
But it's
Tennessee.
UT Martin, so it's like way in the middle of nowhere, and they're known for rodeo.
Yeah, baby.
That's their
Number
sport.
one rodeo in the Southeast. Yeah. Back up.
I wouldn't invest in student housing at UT Martin.
My rent was $600 for the month for the entire 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. My rent was $150 a month. And I had sometimes hard times paying my rent.
$150 a month for a 4-bedroom house to split with
Yeah.
4 girls.
Yeah. The best times of my life.
Yeah.
Thank God for that guy,
Yeah.
who rented him. But they were practically mobile home style
Right.
ish. They were pretty
Probably
close.
was a mobile
So
home.
you didn't pay for
Double
location.
No, I didn't pay for the location. Everybody would go home. In the summer, there was nothing to do. We had a Walmart. So I had to go home to work. So we would sometimes rent out, we would co-sign our lease over to other people during the summer, and then we would take our lease back over.
What'd they pay?
from the summer
$75 a
school.
month?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But they would also have to pay the utilities.
Yeah.
That was the tricky part.
Yeah.
Who was responsible for what? And I
That's
was
right.
still paying utilities even though I didn't live there.
When it comes to Jeff's position, he goes, I don't care who's paying
know.
it. Just give me the check.
Yeah.
See, our landlord was very involved. He was emotionally involved. So he's
Yeah.
like, how can I help? What can I do?
Right. He came to pick up the check, right? Showed
Yeah.
up, clockwork,
Yeah,
right?
he was great.
You could hear his car door shut. You knew when he was coming.
Yeah, we had couches from the alley that we would put on our front porch, and we'd have
was
beer keg
Just
parties.
going to say, is in the front yard.
We had a party house, but
Yeah.
we didn't trash it. We just had a good time in it.
Right.
Yeah. What would you find would be the most lucrative investment out of all of the things that you have?
Well, I'm going to say a loaded question, because lucrative is defined as far as, is it cash flow? Or, you can find any asset that might be really, really strong on cash flow, but it might not appreciate very well. So what are you in for, the long haul or short? So I'm not going to say there's a class. What it comes down to is knowing your market. That's probably the key, more so than anything else, right? You have to know the market better than anyone else to make those financial decisions. And what I mean by that is you could buy any asset in that market if you know it really well. If all you do is multifamily, can you buy multiple states? You could. But are you going to buy multiple classes? No, you won't.
And by classes, you mean class A, B, C, D. They classified the property or the investment.
You could buy storage. Say if you know your market really well, you could buy retail. You could buy storage. You could buy commercial. You could buy multifamily. You can buy single family. You can buy anything that in that market because you know that market really well. Now, if I'm going to go buy something in Florida, I'm only going to buy multifamily. If I'm going to go buy in Texas, I'm going to only buy multifamily. If I'm going to buy Bloomington, Indiana, I'll buy anything that I know I'm going to make money on.
And how many properties do you currently have? What's your profile or your
yeah.
portfolio?
It's constantly changing. So I know that's it might not sound like it's an easy answer. It's not an easy answer. because I don't know. What I can tell you is that, people count things differently. They'll count doors. One door is equal to one lease. Well, one door might be 5 bedrooms. It might be 1 bedroom. So, there's different metrics. For us, I can tell you we have about 1,400 students or 1,400 tenants, right? And storage, we have storage. People measure that by square footage, right? I mean, what's the difference of you have 80 units versus 800 units in storage if it's the same square footage? If you have 50 5x10s or you have one, 50 by 100.
Right. Yeah.
It's the same square footage. So there's all kinds of different metrics. What I base my metric on is rents. And we, in 2012, when we started, we just doing under $30,000 a month in rents, and today we just do over $1 million.
That's great.
That's impressive.
That's my metric I use, and the other metric I watch is increased rent rate. Right? What's our increased overall rental rate? If we're buying properties but we're not increasing our rents, then we're just organically growing. But, we're increasing rents 7 to 10% per year.
That's
so on the
pretty
same
average.
asset, right? And then adding 2 to 3 assets a month. And that can be, in the past 2 years, we've bought storage, we've bought multifamily, we've bought single family, we've bought medical. Medical's been a really, really good asset.
Is that like a full-on hospital or like strip mall?
It's
style?
designated care centers. So
Like
for
those
us,
urgent care buildings. You see?
urgent care is a big one. We don't
Retirement
have
home
we don't have
style?
what we have is a pediatrics centers.
Okay.
So doctors and pediatrics. Every community is going to have kids, right? They need pediatric doctors.
And they rent the space from you essentially.
Yeah.
Or like rotating nurses who come in. Have you seen that to be?
Yeah, rotating nurses is great in multifamily. It's a great market.
Because they go into an area and they'll rent monthly.
Well, they usually have a contract term,
For like a year. Yeah.
6 months, 4 months to 6 months.
Yeah.
And they get a stipend for housing, and they can come in and they'll pay, what you could get on an Airbnb versus a rental. You're going to get 30 to 40% more.
And it usually probably helps to be furnished for like a traveling nurse.
It's got to be furnished. Yeah, because they'll get their assignments. It's like anything. It's like grad students. We know exactly when grad students are going to hit, right? And grad students have a window from July the 15th through August the 1st. And usually grad students start college or start classes prior to undergrad students. So what happens in the grad student world is everybody wants a 1-bedroom. They're done partying. All of a sudden, they graduated and they're done partying, and they all want 1-bedroom
They're all
units.
sophisticated now.
That's right. And they drink for quality, not quantity.
That's right. I'll have a glass of scotch instead of
right.
a bunch of Busch
They want an
Light.
Keg of
IPA,
beer.
right? Yeah. So they all want 1-bedrooms. So we know from July 15th to August 1-bedrooms will fly off the shelves, sight unseen. They will, because everybody's on a drop ad list, right? A wait list, not a drop ad. They're on a wait list because they wanted to go to 3 schools and they got into X, Y, and Z. Well, everyone's waiting to see where they're going to go, and then all these drops and these wait lists. So everybody's in this last 2-week push for grad students. Where am I going to school? Right. Same with law students. And then they get their pick, and then they find a place, a 1-bedroom, they're going in. Right. Nursing, they get their contracts, and they have to be there within X amount of weeks. Same thing. They'll lease them sight unseen because they know that they're going to be there in whatever time period, and they need this for this duration. And they're going to be there for 4 or 6 months, and they don't care. It's like built-to-rent communities, right? If you live there for 2 years and say, I don't like Texas, let's go to Florida. Well, go to Florida. What'd you lose? Nothing, right? You didn't have to pay for a realtor. You didn't have to market your place. You didn't have to put all this money into your place. You just said, hey,
Underwriting process.
we're done. We're moving out.
Yeah.
True.
And you moved over to Florida. All you had to do was pay your moving cost. So there's so many different methods of every asset class these days and what the pluses and minuses are, but people are still going to rent no matter what. And it's making it easier to rent is the key. Technology.
What do you find has been your biggest lesson learned in the real estate world?
Biggest lesson learned.
Or hardest lesson?
Hardest lesson to learn is, you lose money. Those are the hardest lessons, but the ones that make you better, right? I've lost money on real estate deals, and for every reason I know exactly why now, and it won't happen again. And during COVID, I had a flip that I was doing. I was out with COVID. I missed 8 weeks, and during that time I was doing a flip. Well, it was left up to the contractor to finish it out. Well, the contractor, they don't know what they don't know. They're going to get paid on price. Mm-hmm. So they did a lot of extra work that didn't need to be done, that in the end cost me more money and didn't make me any more money. I broke even on it, but I was happy to break even on that because of what was going on. This was the early days of COVID. Like, March hit, April was happening. Yep. This was July.
The first couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This wasn't when homes were flying off the shelves. This is when nobody was buying anything. So had I kept that for a year, things would have been different. But the other thing is about, your leases. Some of the hardest lessons I've learned is through, debate with an attorney or having to go through the court system about a lease, of what they broke and what they owe for and what they did or what they didn't do. A simple lease there's no such thing as a simple lease. Every paragraph in a lease is because something has happened, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And today, the language gets reworded and worded and reworded based upon legal and lawsuits. Not lawsuits we've maybe been involved in, but through the state. Somebody else had a lawsuit, and there was a judgment. And so you got to constantly keep on top of those things because real estate law in every state's different, and tenants' rights are different. So knowing those, I missed a deadline to return a security deposit. This was on my own property. The state of Indiana, you have 45 days from the date the tenant vacates.
Tenants are waiting every day until the 40. They're just, if you miss, you have to owe more, right?
No,
you get penalized.
You have to return the full amount.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you go past that date now, it's full.
Yeah. Even though they might have damaged it and they owe you more, mm-hmm. you have to give a full refund. It's just a yes or no question. Did you miss it or not miss it? Mm-hmm. It's not a debate.
Well, was that one of those people where they should not have gotten the full amount? Was there some damage?
I don't remember that. I'm sure it was because if they would have gotten their full amount of money, it would have been immaterial.
Yeah.
But it cost me. So that was the lesson I learned, that 45 days is 45 days. Mm-hmm. Now there's still law in Indiana it still needs clarity, because it doesn't say 45 days from the date it was mailed or received or notice given. And so the state of Indiana really needs to do some work on that, because, electronic means is the same as, acceptance is the same as mail received, right?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, if you had
Dated.
But it comes down to, did you have read receipt on your email? Right? Simple things like this that you don't ever think about, but if they received it and you give notice to the court that they read receipt this, then your date is there. So, there's misconception after misconception after misconception of every tenant that wants to cite you what the laws for it is, right? It's not from the date you move out. It's from the date the lease ends. So tenants will move out, July 13th. They'll say, I turn my keys in the 13th. Well, the lease ends July 31st. Mm-hmm. The lease was not terminated sooner. Mm-hmm. If the lease was terminated sooner, then yes, it starts July the 13th. But this thought of, well, I gave you the keys then, I gave you my possession. Well, there were 3 other tenants in there. I didn't get possession of it. So that really is the tricky piece. And I'm not saying it's intentionally. It's just what people don't know what they don't know. And even at that point, you're always fighting just to prove your point. And sometimes, would you rather be right or happy?
Happy for the most part.
That's a great question,
That's
David. In marriage,
it's a
would
question
you
we
rather
say to each other all the time.
Yeah.
It started with I'd rather be right, but I changed it to happy after a while.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What advice would you give people wanting to get into real estate investing?
Yeah, where does one start?
Yeah. So the first part of that is what advice will I give and where to start, right? The advice is get in as soon as you can. Do not think, well, I missed the window. I've got people like, oh, I should have bought 20 years ago when you started buying. Well, why am I still buying today? Because there's still opportunity today, right? So today is the opportunity to buy first.
And how much money do people need to have to start?
Well, I'm going to say a loaded question too, but what do you have, right? That'll determine what you can buy, whether you're buying it solo or you're crowdfunding with others or you're forming a partnership with others. Do not let how much money you have be a limit of your thoughts of what you can do, right? And what to buy, the advice on, where how to get started. Get started with someone who's been there before you have, right? You cannot take 5 people at a table that have never owned real estate, decide, hey, I think it's a great idea we pool all our money together and we go buy an asset. That can happen. It's exactly the way it happened for me, at one period with 2 fraternity brothers. We sat down and said, hey, let's pool some money together and let's go buy this. And we did. Now, were there lessons to be learned along the way? Absolutely. Would I advise people to do that today? No. I would say find someone who's been there before you have, whether 5 years, 10 years, or longer. Someone who's done one deal, that's not getting there before you have. They just picked up the phone faster than you did. But you have to have someone who has been there and experienced and has their own money in a deal. Not a real estate agent that's never owned a piece of property. Too many real estate agents want to give you advice and they've never owned rental properties. They say this is a great deal. They don't know what a great deal is.
You are so right. You're so right
We've
about
had these
that.
conversations with people.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Don't
not.
do multifamily. Well, do you know anything about it? No. But don't do it. I'm not going to listen to you.
Do not buy an investment property from a residential real estate agent.
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Advice. Do not.
So, Jeff, we've picked your brain numerous times, but for our audience who maybe aren't as familiar with what you do, you syndicate, you own these properties, but you also offer coaching for people like us or people who are interested to get involved. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so over the last 23 years of doing rental properties myself, I've learned a lot. Of course, I've learned, how to avoid the potholes, right? How to avoid the speed bumps, how to get there faster. And that's what I'll tell people. Anytime you do something is you want to know how to get there faster, pay someone for their experiences. And that's what I offer, right? Can you go and do this on your own? Absolutely. And you can enjoy every piece of it the way I have. Or you can pay me, work with me, and I will tell you how to get to $0 to $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month quicker. But what it comes down to is it starts with a one-on-one conversation. Where do you want to go? What do you see yourself being involved in? Do you want to be what they call a passive, which means you just give money and you have the benefits, or do you want to be active? Active means you're the guy, lady out there leasing the property, answering the phone calls, mowing the grass, do whatever it takes, right? There's different sides of the equation. What I work with people on is first to find out where do you want to be, right? In 3, 5, 10 years. And then from there, I like to work with people to get you in that mindset to go there. And through my coaching program, what I offer people is there's three methods. One is it's calls that we do, right? You get access to recorded calls that we're doing about various events, various things on real estate. It'd be like reading a book, right? You're going to absorb some of it. The second thing is being active participant in the real estate calls. Then you can ask your questions. You can be in the position where you're getting the knowledge that you need. And then the third piece is just one-on-one, where I work with people. And what today is for me is my time is the commodity. And so I do charge for my time, and I work with people on that. If it's a group setting, of course, it's a lower price point. If it's one-on-one, it's going to be a higher price point because you're getting exact, from me, what you need to do this deal. In a group setting, we're going to talk in general terms. We're not going to talk about a specific deal. We might talk about a specific deal I'm doing, and we'll use as a real case example, but we're not going to talk about their specific deal. So what people have access is they pay for the time to get to me.
And what's been really beneficial with you too is you know what you don't know. You already know the things where people like us are just starting out. We don't even know what questions to ask. We can't even think outside of our little box when you've got this gigantic plantation.
Yeah.
Just back that up. Plantation's probably not the right word. You've got this gigantic, what would be a word I could use?
Rolodex of information.
Yes, you have a gigantic Rolodex of information.
Yeah. Issues you can work
You're
through.
the Google of
Life experiences.
Yeah. And so when you've been helping us on things, I hadn't even thought to ask certain questions.
Yeah.
And you were like, ask this, ask that, ask this, ask that, put this in writing, have this in the, and it's just, you saved us so much money and headaches along the way. And I know you've done that for numerous people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to see you help more and more people because you're really good at it.
Well, thank you.
You have a gift.
The thing that you should be scared about most in a real estate deal, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say.
Exactly. And how would we
ask
know?
the right questions, right?
You don't even know.
Right. We don't even.
And no one's going to give you that information willingly.
No.
Because they want to close the deal.
They want to close the deal. So that real estate agent, whether they work for you or for the other side, they are not going to be inquisitive to find out what's best for you. They're going to find out what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have you asked a question to one of those agents or brokers and they don't even know those questions or answers?
It's typically they don't know the answer at all.
Yeah. Or they didn't
Or
even
they
think about
say
it.
they don't know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example.
Please.
Right? I had a guy, this is a funny story. There was a murder at a property. I knew there was a murder at the property. I remember the murder at the property 10 years prior. And he's selling the asset. He's representing the seller. And they went in, they cleaned it up, they fixed it up, they did some things, right? So I had a buyer. I was representing the buyer. And it was not a multifamily thing. It was like a duplex thing, right? Mm-hmm. But it was a stigmatized property. So I asked him, I said, hey, there was a murder at this property. He says, oh, I don't know. No idea of it. I sent him the newspaper article, right? I'm like, here's the newspaper article of the house, right? Well, he has a fiduciary responsibility to disclose that now. Now, the state of Indiana says if you are asked if someone's died at that property, you must answer the question. If you are not asked, you do not have to answer the question, or you don't have to give the information. Mm-hmm. So when I go into a property, every time I ask, has anybody murdered here, died here? And people look at me funny, like, why would you ask that? It's like, because now that I asked it, you have to answer the question.
Yeah.
You want to see how honest they are as a realtor.
Right, right. And most of the time, the real estate agents, whether they know the answer or not, they're going to say no. Well, that real estate agent said no. Well, my buyer backed out on the deal, right? Now, could I filed a complaint? Absolutely, I could have. But it wasn't worth my time, right?
The loss of sale was harsh enough, I'm sure, for him.
But the problem was someone bought that property and didn't know it.
Oh, my God.
Right?
What was his response when he showed an article?
Crickets.
Like, nothing.
Nothing.
It's like, well, now you know. So if somebody asks again,
You know that I know that we know
Uh-huh.
someone was murdered at that property.
That's what you think, like Jeffrey Dahmer. Can you imagine moving into his apartment?
Well, here's how the story gets worse, right? So an out-of-state buyer bought it sight unseen.
There you go.
And the selling real estate agent, the buyer's real estate agent, super excited to tell the world, right? Every residential agent who sells a property this day thinks they made the world go round, right? They think they put the gas in the tank. They did everything to make this deal happen, right? They have no financial standing in it, no financial commitment in it other than them getting paid. But they want to tell the world how great they did. Well, this agent posted online,
Look what I did.
look what I did. I sold this sight unseen.
No.
right? I just sent the newspaper clip to her.
What happened?
She removed the post.
Yeah, the internet always wins.
Yeah. That buyer, if their agent asked the question, was anybody murdered to this property? And then they got a wrongful answer and they said no and it actually was, then there's recourse.
You could back out?
Well, no, yeah, they
It's
can.
probably legality.
It's legality. They can sue the seller for that.
Just for
Now,
lying about it.
If they did not ask the question, there is no responsibility of the seller to that buyer.
To disclose
How do you prove
anything.
it though? How do you prove that you asked the question?
Don't be the source. Refer to the source. You want everything in writing.
Like send an email saying, was there a murder at this property?
Yeah.
If you know it's a serious question, you better put it in writing, essentially.
Do not be the residential real estate agents, commercial real estate agents, anybody who's in real estate, do not be the source of information. Always refer to the source.
Yeah, we learned that the hard way with this house. Our real estate, the
Oh,
seller,
the seller's realtor lied
such a
about
joke.
everything.
Everything.
The roof, you name it. It was just like, oh, brand new. Oh, this. Oh, no problem.
And then everything started coming. And anyway, there's a whole story behind all of that.
You know how it is.
But that's the thing. If that real estate agent would have said, hey, check your inspection. Go to the inspection. Go to the inspection. Go to the inspection. Well, I don't know. Well, if you are referring to the source, which is the document, here it is on page 14. Here it is on page 22. You really don't have anything else to say. It's there. So it's the hard lesson people learn in real estate, on both sides of the equation.
It's all he said, she said at that point.
But I'll repeat this. It's not what they say, it's what they don't say to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And that's the same with a real estate agent, but also a seller.
And so it's important to have somebody like you in your corner to help you ask the questions that maybe we aren't thinking to ask.
Right. I mean, I can look at a P&L and I can tell where they're burying the bodies,
Literally.
right? And the money, right? I mean, typically, especially if it's a seller that's owned it for a long time, if it's an individual seller, they are hiding so much money on the top end and the bottom end. What do I mean? Rents, they're taking a lot of cash. Their financials aren't real, right? The second, on their expenses, they're burying all kinds of expenses. We're like, well, what are they burying? Cell phones, trips, postage, landscaping. They're getting all that stuff done from their own home, but expanding it to the real estate asset.
Interesting.
I was looking at a property and their landscape budget was off. I mean, it was like large.
And it probably didn't look like it in person.
They didn't have new bushes at that property.
It was all dirt.
Yeah.
And so they were using their own property.
Oh, I bet they had a new pool at their house. They had something at their house. If I went in to search, but I knew for me that was a plus because that landscape budget wasn't real.
Your expenses go down.
Now my expenses go down. Now to every buyer out there, they're running expense ratios at what they're running. I can run a lower expense ratio because I know that they're hiding expenses.
Right. Yeah. They also lie about their occupancy percentage too, right? You want to make sure that
Like if you're selling.
you're like, oh, it's 95% occupied, but you get in there and it's 70%.
Refer to the source, which is the lease.
Source. Yeah.
And then document, you want an ID. Here's a tip. A piece of paper with a name on it is not a real lease. Get a picture ID to match that name on that lease.
There you go. So Jeff, I don't know what you charge per hour. And you don't have to disclose, but what I would say is do it. Do the one-on-one, because if someone's making an investment with you and they're going to do a deal, they have the potential to lose thousands, not millions of dollars on a bad deal where they could invest with you on a one-on-one and save all that money.
And have you in their corner the whole
Yeah,
way.
I mean, I've joined groups and flown out to look at an asset, right? And they spent 6 months working on a deal, and in 8 hours, we killed the deal. And at the end of the day, it was painful. There was money lost, but they didn't lose their reputation. They didn't lose years of their life, of an asset that wasn't going to work. They didn't lose their credibility or other people's money. They lost their own money, because they had put money up on a deal that in the end wasn't a great deal.
Yeah.
And
It's so worse.
they I think one of them said it was like drinking from a fire hose for 8 hours straight. I just was peppering them with stuff, this, and they, what they'll say to this day is they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know the questions to ask. Mm-hmm. What they were basing every decision on was what they were told. Now, they would have repeated those same mistakes, deal after deal after deal. And if you remember early in the conversation, I said it's not exiting the deal is where you win. It's buying the deal is where you win. So if they were buying deal after deal wrong, all their exits were going to be awful.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine?
Right?
And that's why people get discouraged in the real estate game. They lose one and they're like, I'm not doing this ever again.
Well, some people could lose everything if you do the wrong deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's who you partner with.
Yeah.
Right? If all five of you sitting at that table invested and nobody had real estate experience, all five lost.
Right.
Right? If you partnered with somebody, they're going to take you through that path, right? And if it's a mentorship or if it's a coaching program, whatever it is, you're going to get there faster. You're going to make more money. But if you're focusing on what it cost, besides what you can make, your mindset's already wrong.
Do you think that's why it's more comfortable and safe to just buy some of these smaller, condos or houses and do single family, just rentals? Because it's like, I'm not gonna mess a bunch of stuff up, because that's a big scary number when you say like put 200,000 down for $1 million property.
Okay, put 20,000 down. If you lost 20,000, would it hurt?
Yeah,
sure. 20,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, people just feel like it's it's more reachable. I think people don't understand how to get to that multifamily deal. So that way, call Jeff.
Yeah, and multifamily is you can't go it alone.
Yeah,
no one should go at it alone. In multifamily, I mean, your strength is your numbers. Yeah. It's 3 people asking questions versus 1 person asking the question. Your value, right? I mean, your power to do a deal, to close a deal, to get there faster. I mean, you're not just 3 times the speed. You're 30 times the speed, because you've got everybody pushing for the same thing. Yeah. And there's, I mean, it's like anything, right? I forget more than I know. The longer you're in this game, right, you start to forget more than you know, and then you remember about a deal you did 10 years ago, and you're like, oh, remember that deal? Mm-hmm. That's the piece that I can pull off the shelf. And whether interest rates are 4% or 5% or 10%, I've never not done a deal because of an interest rate.
Okay.
Right? And people are stuck right now because they think, well, I can't make money on this. I could at 4%. Well, it's not 4%. Don't even think about it as 4%. People are stigmatized now because it was cheaper then. Well, so was everything else.
True.
Everything.
Do you want to make the same amount of money that you did 5 years ago? No. Then why are you looking at rates 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Look at something different. Again, change your perspective, your outlook.
So I guess that's good to lead into this. The rumors are, market's crashing, everything's changing. Here it comes. Interest rates are crazy, inflation. What do you advise people to do the second half of 2023? We're moving into this time, and interest rates are going back.
Where's the future of the industry?
What do you think people should be doing with their money?
If you're sitting on money, you need to park it in some type of real estate now, right? Whatever you know about real estate, or someone you know that has real estate, or put it into somebody who operates real estate, who's done it before, who's done it for the last 10 years. Do not put it with somebody who's done it 2 years, 5 years. They've not been through the cycle. When times get tough, they might not even exit a deal, right? There's so many people out there that say invest with me, and they've never exited a deal. Well, if you didn't buy the deal right, you're not going to exit it right. So now it comes down to what to do with that money. Get it parked in some type of real estate asset, right? Do not buy a REIT. Do not put it in some BlackRock fund. You get no benefits of that, right? Put it with somebody who's done it, who's been there for at least 10 years, have exited deals, has a track record, and is only buying assets they know they can make money on, right? Someone who's been at it 10 years is not looking for an asset to make an acquisition fee on. Right? That's the short win. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to be in this in the long term, you got to make it on the end. You got to make people money. So, do I think the sky's falling? No, I don't. I think there's going to be opportunities, and here's why. Yes, the rates were 3-4% over the last 5-8 years. Everybody who got into real estate, investment property real estate, those loans are going to be resetting. Typically, you don't see fixed rate loans in commercial real estate. Usually they're going to be 3, 5, 7, maybe 10. 10 if you're lucky to get a fixed rate. Typically it's about a 5-year. Right? So anybody that bought assets in 2018, in 2023, those are going to be coming up for a refinance or a rate change. They got a rate change coming, and it's not going to be the same as they had in 2018.
These are multifamily.
These are any asset.
Really?
That maybe it's an investment property. It could be a duplex. It could be a storage unit. It could be medical. Any commercial loan that was booked in 2018, 2019, 2020, if they're on a 3 or 5 year, the rate change is coming up, right? We've had them. We've gone from, but most of ours were, at a 5, 4 or 5, and we went to a 6, 6.5. Didn't change us. I mean, we had so much equity in them. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But people who are making slim margins and they were betting on the exit to make their money, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So there's going to be buy opportunities.
Can you break down that like simplistic term, basically the way you put money in, 5-10 years go by, you refi, you pull money out, and how that works with the equity?
Talking about us as investors or him as the syndicator?
Just, I guess, as an investor.
It'd be
So
both.
yeah, for someone, yeah, so
Both. If he's one hand on the money, when he dumps it, how do you get it back out and make the money?
So if somebody, one of our listeners, sitting on 20,000 or 20 million, and they invest with you, what does that look like?
Yeah. So in all of our real estate deals that we go into, right, we're going to have a limited partner, general partner opportunity. Myself, I'm the general partner. And what that means is I find the deal, I underwrite the deal, I source the deal, I book the insurance, I get the debt, I put the whole thing together in a bow, right? Box and a bow, here it is. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to make money. I have money invested in this just alongside other partners. So the limited partners are the ones that are just putting money in. That's it. They're not taking phone calls. They're not doing showings. They're getting all the benefits of real estate investing by just being on the sidelines as a passive investor. I make all the decisions on running the asset, on leasing it, maintaining it. You'll get full, reporting of what we do and how we do it. But where it comes out to is on the exit or on a refinance. Just call this a capital occurrence. Capital occurrence can happen on a refinance or it can happen on a sale. If you sell the asset, right, you're going to get paid back the money you put in and then some, right? I'm going to make a percentage of how well we did on the asset. There's usually what they call a hurdle, right? A hurdle is going to be, if you made 10%, right? After 10%, the next 5%, I get an extra bonus, right? If you've made 15% on your money and anything above 15%, I'll get a bonus, right? It's how well did I do, right? There's nothing to do with, did I mismanage? Well, if I mismanage, that means that's less money that I was going to make on an exit. So everything aligns for us to win-win. Every deal, there's an alignment. So on a refinance, when we have cash that comes back out, so what happens is you increase the value of that asset. For the math we did, on the $2,500 or $25 on 100 units, $2,500 a month, $30,000 for the year, that added $600,000 in value. Well, over the course of 3 to 5 years, the asset's going to increase in value by doing both the top line rent increases and the bottom line expense management. So your NOI is going to get better. Once your operating income is better, the value of that's going to go up. What we can is we can go to a lender or back to the same lender and say, listen, we'd like to do a refinance on this property, cash out. And what that means is the value of the property today, they're going to give you a new loan on it. Could be 70-30. Typically, it's not going to be the same LTV as when you purchased it. The bank always wants to have a little hedge, or the lender wants to have a little hedge on that. So they might say, we're going to give you a 70%, 30%. Well, you pay off the old loan, you got a new loan, and what you're pulling out is the proceeds, and you distribute those to all the investors. You still have the same amount of ownership in the asset.
So now you're back to have all your savings back out like you did, and you can start a new project, essentially.
Right. And you just start stacking that. My story goes back to, where I really got started was in 1999. From 94 to 99, I was doing my own deals. In 99, partnered with a couple of fraternity brothers, and we bought our first asset, 610 and 612 North Dunn Street for $179,000. It's making $1,450 a month.
It's not bad.
Okay. Today, we still own that.
Do you really?
23 years later, right? It's worth about $1 million.
What kind of building is it?
It's a single family home.
Single family. From
You in the same-
179 to $1 million in value.
You guys still own it. All the fraternity brothers are still.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And we make I think we make $6,800 a month on that same property.
Split amongst all of you.
Well, it just goes into a pool. We own
Sure.
a bunch of properties together.
That's great, though.
With the one example, we bought it for $179,000. It's worth about $1 million today. And over the last 20 years, we've refinanced that property. I don't know how many times, but I can tell you, like, our loan balance is like $550,000 on it. So that means we've pulled out $500,000 on that property and paid zero taxes on that.
And reinvested it into other units.
Yes. And we bought other properties.
And have then made money on that and
Yes.
paid zero taxes on that. And
Correct.
so the cycle continues.
And so the cycle continues.
And that's how
So
it's done.
after 23 years of stacking, the long game is now where we can really reap what we sowed, right? We didn't take any profits. We didn't harvest any profits for 23 years. And we're just now starting to do that.
So your grandpa was right all along.
Right?
Long game.
Long game.
Full
Yep.
circle.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
Well, we don't know what we don't know. Are there any questions we're not asking that maybe you think would be important to share, or anything that we've left out?
There's so much to know about real estate that it's not that it changes, it's that your experiences change, right? And we could do this every day, and there's going to be a different story, a different experience, whether it's from the tenant, whether it's from the parent, whether it's from the lender, whether it's from today's environment of rates, the buyer, the investor. There's so many different angles, right? When you sit at a table to do a real estate deal, you're not doing this solo, right? You got a lender, you got an insurance agent, you better have a CPA involved, you better have a great attorney involved, and you better have all those legs of the stool that you need, because you're going to need them. And one mistake I made was I didn't change my team as I grew. Indiana people were really loyal. It's great. I was loyal to all the people I worked with that got me to where I was, but they could only take me so far. And what I didn't do was make changes along the way to grow my team that could prepare me for the next chapters. And so I was stagnant for a bit there, but what I learned was, you have to expand that team, and they have to grow with you. You can't drag them along and teach them.
Don't be afraid to scale.
Yeah. Internally.
And do not choose someone that's never been there. Just like a real estate deal, right? Do not choose a professional partner, attorney, real estate agent, CPA, or your lender who's not already been there before, because you're paying for their learning experience.
It's great advice.
Yeah. Wise words.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to connect or
Yeah.
invest or hire you for one-on-one?
Sure. BrawleyCapital.com and BRAWLEY, BrawleyCapital.com, or Jeff at thebrawleygroup.com, and be happy to connect and tell you where you might go right or where you could go wrong. But at the end of this, don't feel like real estate is not for you. I think it's by far the best place to put money today, and it will be again 100 years from now. And there's properties I own that are over 100 years old right now. Right?
It's not going anywhere.
So in 100 years from now, there's going to be people in these properties that I own right now. 612 North Dunn Street. That house was built 1940 something. Right? It's still going to be there in 20 years.
Worth $1 million.
And it's going to be there in 50 years. Now, will it look the same? No, but the dirt will be the same.
Everybody needs a place to live.
Yeah.
Starts with dirt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for joining us on Shift and Focus. This was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's been awesome to have you here and to share your knowledge with everybody. And you guys, when I tell you he has literally helped us so much, we don't say that with a grain of salt.
That's right.
You have literally been such a huge implementation in our lives and in the real estate, and we're really grateful to have you in our corner.
And just to
share you
just
with
to add
everybody
one more
else.
thing too, to prove that this guy's the truth. We were at a Cardone event in a room with Grant, and instead of Grant preaching on the information, he was asking you questions about the housing market, about student housing. Everyone was kind of looking around the room at you, and Grant was on stage, and you were running the show there. So he's the truth.
Yeah, and Grant says, "Hey, he knows what he knows," and he'll rightfully say, "Hey, it's not that I don't like student assets; he just doesn't know it.
It's not my thing.
It's not his thing," and he's going to stay in his lane. And as I spoke earlier, right? If your lane is your market and you know everything that happens in that market, great. If your lane is multifamily, do not get out of that lane. Go buy multifamily all over the nation. If it's student, go buy student all over the nation. But knowing what you know and continuing to replicate and reproduce results, that's the key.
I guess one last thing for us as Floridians now, if we were, let's just say, to be sitting on some liquid and there was one way to start in the area and you don't like single family homes because of the tax purposes, what would you say to someone like us that wants to start here?
Invest with someone, not in something. Yeah, put it with somebody who can lead you to success. And they always say, invest in yourself, and that's what you're doing. You're putting money with somebody who can teach you and take you to the place you want to go. But it's tough to get there on your own.
All right, you heard it here.
Yeah.
Call Jeff Brawley.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank
See
you,
guys.
Jeff.
See you.